podcast is brought to you as a joint initiative between Anubhav, the National Institute of Social Defense, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, and Media for Community Foundation. Producers, Covaicare Retirement Communities. If you're a senior citizen and need help, contact our Elder Helpline 14567 between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. We promise to help you lead a better life. I repeat, 14567 between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m.
Vanakkam, Namaskar. A few days back, a news article made us sit up and wonder why the world is so unequal and how the underprivileged and impoverished continue to survive the wide inequalities in economic, gender, health, and other social parameters. This podcast is going to outline some stark statistics about the unequal world that we live in. We have extracted the statistics from a report published by Oxfam recently. Oxfam is a British-founded confederation of 21 independent charitable organizations focusing on the alleviation of global poverty, founded in 1942 and led by Oxfam International. We are placing this before you as we feel it is useful to understand and appreciate one more aspect of the world we live in.
Economic violence. Extreme inequality is a form of economic violence where structural and systemic policy and political choices that are skewed in favor of the richest and most powerful people result in direct harm to the vast majority of ordinary people worldwide. That people in poverty, women and girls, and racialized groups are so often disproportionately killed or harmed more than those who are rich and privileged is not an accidental error in today's dominant form of capitalism, but a core part of it. Oxfam estimates that inequality is now contributing to the deaths of at least 21,300 people each day, or one person every 4 seconds. This is a highly conservative estimate for deaths resulting from hunger in a world of plenty, the denial of access to quality health care in poor countries, and gender-based violence faced by women and rooted in patriarchy.
The widening gap. The fortune of the world's 2,755 billionaires exploded during the COVID-19 pandemic. Their fortunes increased as much in 24 months as they did in 23 years before. Since 1995, 1% of the people have captured nearly 20 times of global wealth than the bottom 50% of humanity. A new billionaire has been created every 26 hours since the pandemic began. The world's 10 richest men have doubled their fortunes, while over 160 million people are projected to have been pushed into poverty. Meanwhile, an estimated 17 million people have died from COVID-19, a scale of loss not seen since the Second World War. The richest 10 men have greater wealth than the poorest 40% of humanity combined. Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, could lose 90% of his wealth and still be in the top 0.0001% of the world's richest people. His wealth has increased by 699% since 2019. It would take 112 years for the average person in the bottom 50% to make what someone in the top gets in a year.
Gender difference. Gender inequality in numbers. Women make up less than 24% of the world's parliamentarians and 5% of its mayors. On an average, women are paid 24% less than men for comparable work across all regions and sectors. Nearly 2/3 of the world's 781 million illiterate adults are women, a proportion that has remained unchanged for 2 decades. 153 countries have laws which discriminate against women economically, including 18 countries where husbands can legally prevent their wives from working. Worldwide, 1 in 3 women and girls will experience violence or abuse in their lifetime. Before the pandemic, it was estimated that it would take 100 years to close the gender pay gap. Now it will take 136 years. 1.4 times women are more likely to drop out of the labor force than men. Women take on more than 3 times unpaid care work than men. 67,000 women die every year due to genital mutilation or murder by current or ex-partner.
Health and vaccine inequality. An estimated 5.6 million people die every year for lack of access to healthcare in poor countries. Hunger kills over 2.1 million people each year at a minimum. By 2030, the climate crisis could kill 231,000 people each year in poor countries. G7 countries have received roughly 1 in every 5 doses, that is 2 billion, distributed so far, while low-income countries have received just 0.5%, that's just 33 million. The cost to the economy of failing to vaccinate the world is estimated to be $9 trillion. Providing a vaccine to everyone on earth is less than 1% of this cost. Vaccines created 9 new billionaires with combined wealth greater than the cost of vaccinating the world's poorest countries. Having more money in your pocket not only buys you access to healthcare, it also buys you a longer and healthier life. For example, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, people in the richest areas can expect to live 14 years longer than those who live in the poorest areas.
Environmental disaster. The richest 10% accounted for over half, that is 52% of the emissions added to the atmosphere between 1990 and 2015. The richest 1% were responsible for 15% of emissions during this time, more than all the citizens of the European Union, and more than twice that of the poorest half of humanity, that is 7%. During this time, the richest 10% blew 1/3 of our remaining global 1.5 degrees Celsius carbon budget, compared to just 4% for the poorest half of the population. The carbon budget is the amount of carbon dioxide that can be added to the atmosphere without causing global temperatures to rise above 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the goal set by governments in the Paris Agreement to avoid the worst impacts of uncontrolled climate change. Annual emissions grew by 60% between 1990 and 2015. The richest 5% were responsible for over a third, that is 37% of this growth. The total increase in emissions of the richest 1% was 3 times more than that of the poorest 50%.
But we can radically change and redesign our economies to be centered on equality. We can claw back extreme wealth through progressive taxation, invest in powerful, proven inequality busting public measures, and boldly shift power in the economy and society. If we are courageous and listen to the movements demanding change, we can create an economy in which nobody lives in poverty, not with unimaginable billions wealth, in which inequality no longer kills. Thank you for listening. This podcast was brought to you by
Revathi, Bhasker
and Krishnan on behalf of Covaicare, Coimbatore.
இந்த வலையொலி அனுபவ், தேசிய சமூக பாதுகாப்பு நிறுவனம், சமூக நீதி மற்றும் அதிகாரமளித்தல் அமைச்சகம் மற்றும் மீடியா ஃபார் கம்யூனிட்டி ஃபவுண்டேஷன் இவர்களின் கூட்டு முயற்சியாக உங்களிடம் கொண்டு வரப்பட்டது. திட்ட ஒருங்கிணைப்பாளர்கள் டாக்டர் ஆர் ஸ்ரீதர் மற்றும் ஆலோக் வர்மா அவர்கள். வானொலி ஒருங்கிணைப்பாளர்கள் பூஜா முராடா, கௌசல்யா மற்றும் சாய் சுதா அவர்கள். தயாரிப்பாளர்கள் கோவை வாணி, கோவைக்கேர் ரிட்டையர்மெண்ட் கம்யூனிட்டிஸ். நீங்கள் ஒரு மூத்த குடிமகனாக இருந்து உதவி தேவைப்பட்டால் எங்கள் எல்டர்லைன் ஹெல்ப் லைனை தொலைபேசி எண் 145667 இல் தொடர்பு கொள்ளவும். காலை 8 மணி முதல் இரவு 8 மணி வரை. ஒரு சிறந்த வாழ்க்கையை வாழ உங்களுக்கு உதவி செய்ய நாங்கள் உறுதி அளிக்கிறோம். மறுபடியும் கேளுங்கள். தொலைபேசி எண் 145667 காலை 8 மணி முதல் இரவு 8 மணி வரை.
That's all for today, folks. Be safe. Fight COVID with 2 vaccinations. Wear a mask when you go out. Keep safe distance. Observe proper hygiene. We must win. We will win. Thank you.